if you've successfully completed week three's tasks, you should have a draft of some chapter contents and chapter titles for your book. If you're like me, you possibly don't actually have them all matched up together yet, and it's still a bit vague, which is why we're not really trying to worry about which order these things are going to go in just yet. We're going to worry really about structure after we've finished the first draft. We don't really want to spend too much time worrying about that at this point in the process. So don't get too hung up on what order they're going to go on. I'm kind of mentally obsessed with the perfect start, and I have to really sort of discipline myself to not just sit there trying to wait until everything falls into the perfect order so I know what the perfect start is. So learn from me and try not to get hung up on that. Okay, so but what I thought I'd give you as a little added extra is a quick run through on some options for thinking about how you'll structure your book. Obviously, it's going to be very dependent on the type of book that you're doing, but I'll talk you through some of the options. This first model is a version of Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey, which you've possibly heard of before because it's quite a widely known way of thinking about the structure of stories. And how it goes is that we start with a hero in their normal life, normal life, and here we say a zone of comfort. But they need something. There's a problem arises in this world which forces them to enter into an unfamiliar situation. And here we see that they're going from order to chaos, and this is very parallel with going from conscious to unconscious with those psychological ideas. So we've got a great metaphor there for what happens in personal transformation. The person has to adapt to this new world. They discover wonderful things and they discover terrible things, and then they appear to get what they needed. And this is a really critical point because and it's kind of like a pivot point in the story where they realize that what they wanted doesn't satisfy them. They actually pay a heavy price for taking this solution, and they come to a moment that is a death, or a death of the soul, or that sort of near-death situation before they return to their situation changed. And there's usually a resolution at this point. And they are able to solve their original problem properly because they've changed. So I use that version, which is by a fiction writer, the guy who does some TV shows. Community is one. Rick and Morty is another. But I think what it's really simple for is when you're understanding the journey that a person needs to go through in a story, which I think has a lot of application in nonfiction. Okay, so here is a very similar, another version that is actually the trademarked version of an advertising agency that do this sort of work. And what we have here is we step back from that starting point in the Dan Harmon model, and we get a bit of their backstory first. We need to know the stakes for the hero. Then we get the disruption coming in that forces them to come away. We have additional characters, antagonists, and a mentor arrives. That happens when they're in this new world. Now, the thing that is kind of missing from this, because it is designed for brands, is the conflict. We have the antagonists here. So we understand that there is a disruption, there is going to be conflict, but it's not quite specifically there. But in non-fiction, that's quite suitable. In fiction, that's a real problem, but we can get away with that in non-fiction a bit more. What I like particularly here is there's this moral category and this ritual category that we're missing from the others, which I think also offer great opportunities depending on what the purpose of your book is. This is another one that was developed by an agency to help businesses tell their stories. So it should have a great application in non-fiction generally. Again, we start with the character, with a problem, and here the mentor is more specifically put in than in the Dan Harmon one. The mentor gives them a plan. Now, this is where, for a coach or someone like that, this is potentially a map. The plan calls them to action that results in success and helps them avoid failure. So basically, this is the promise that your product or service is making to your customers. Again, I feel that it's missing the hard parts, but I think overall it's a great structure for structuring a business story. This version of the hero's journey is the heroine's journey, and it does have quite a different underpinning. I guess you could look at it, if we saw before, as being the conscious and the unconscious in the Dan Harmon model. In Maureen Murdoch's model, it's really much more about the integration of the whole human, I guess. More of a, if we look at Dan Harmon's model as perhaps being about the ego, this is about perhaps more the whole person. So we start again with the person in their normal world, and in this one there is a prompting to go out and really kind of more so emphasize masculine parts of their personalities and to be part of the masculine world. They do have conflicts and have trouble. They do achieve success. The same things in the other one. But then they realize that what they wanted wasn't all that there's something missing. They then meet a woman during a crisis when their masculine things fail, who inspires them to want to reconnect with that feminine side. And then they go through a series of challenges, I guess, or tasks that allow them to heal the mother-daughter split, heal the wounded masculine within them, and therefore integrate as a whole spiritual being. I think there's some obvious appeal to using that as a structure for a book of a certain kind. This one is actually from an analysis of a whole bunch of talks, including some of Steve Jobs' famous presentations for Apple. And so the woman is Nancy Duarte, and you can watch her TED talk. But what she talks about is how there's a constant back and forth between what is now and what could be. What is now, what could be. Now you've got a Walkman. What if you could have your whole library of music in your phone available to you at any time? And so here we're going through in here all objections, all of the things that they might have in their head about, why would that be bad, or why could that be impossible, until we go, look, here it is. This is going to solve all your problems. It's the new bliss. It works really well for Apple, this model. So here it is again, explained in a little bit more detail. But again, we have the norm. We have a call to adventure which is, coming out on the journey. We are still taking them on a journey. And but instead of the ogres and dragons and goddesses and all that, it is this flip back and forth between the current state and what could be. This is another of Nancy Duarte's slide, and what I like this is, if you don't get what I'm getting at about the back and forth between the future and past state, this analogy of tic-tacking like a boat back and forth, perhaps that analogy works for you. I also like that here she's modeled for us with the hero's journey. We assume that this has already happened. What we want to do sometimes is inspire people to take that leap of faith. And so we're presenting them with the vision of the future state. And we're letting them know that there is going to be, there will be dragons, but that we're going to be there. It's going to be this new bliss. And I think that's another important sort of goal of a lot of non-fiction. So I thought that was worth including as well. I hope this has been a nice sort of slightly more than 10 minutes run through of some basic ideas about story structure for you.